Thailand has a huge deep swimming pool. It is surrounded by water. And there is a young man in a bloody condition. His name is Den. He was supposed to be with his lover. But at this moment, he doesn't know where his lover is. His legs are shaking. Because of the blood stains on his legs. He can't open his eyes. He is stuck under the pool. He takes the cup and tries to tie it around the crow's head to stop the blood flow. In the name of the night. But the crow doesn't come back to life. Den is scared on one side and tries to force himself on the other side. But after a while, the blood starts to flow again and Den realizes that the crow's condition is getting worse. On top of the bridge, Laka stands up in a strange way, as if he is getting a tip. But Den still doesn't understand what it is. At night, Laka stands on top of the bridge and starts to scream. Suddenly, Laka sees that a huge crow is coming towards the bridge. The crow was coming near the pipe and the ventilation. Laka gets scared, goes back, and that scene becomes a bad dream for Den. Now we are back in the present time. Den is stuck in this crow's bridge, there is no blood with him, and another cruel crow. Den realizes that the crow didn't come to this bridge like this. It must have entered through the ventilation or the pipeline. If you look around, you can see that the sofa is lying on one side of the bridge, as if the set of the shooting is on the verge of death. The crow still doesn't come back to life. And just then, Den gets a pregnancy test kit out of the crow's pocket. Den is shocked to see the kit, because the result is positive, that means the crow is pregnant. Water comes to Den's eyes. He slowly puts his hand on the crow's head and says, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." But Den himself knows how terrible the situation is. Den goes to check the crow's head and sees that blood is coming out again. He keeps looking around. Just then, Den sees a thick duct tape stuck inside the crow's mouth. It looks like the ma'am had thrown some tape the other day. Den goes to the crow like crazy, takes out his hand and goes to pull the tape. The crow suddenly gets up, as if it's broken. Den pulls the duct tape and hides behind it. The crow is shaking, but it doesn't stop. Den uses the duct tape to tie the crow's head properly, as if there is less blood. Then he keeps a little water in a bucket on the bridge. Because if the water runs out, they will die even faster. Den puts the water in the crow's mouth little by little. Still, the crow doesn't come back to life. Den keeps looking again and again, but there is no way out. Then Den looks at the ventilation. He can understand that the water comes in and out of this way. If the ventilation is open instead of the crow's head, will they be able to get out of that way? Den slowly goes that way. The crow keeps trying to wake up, as if it is strong. But right here, the crow gets up again. The crow goes straight to the ventilation, as if it wants to make the way its own. Den gets terrified. Because now, that only possible way has also fallen into disaster. Den waits inside the bridge, waiting for the crow to come out of the ventilation. But even if it takes a long time, the crow doesn't come out. So, forced, Den throws his own life into the ventilation. If he can find a way to get out. Fortunately, Den finds a narrow corridor-like path by going inside. But there is a door in front of him. And the door is locked. Den pushes it with his hand, but can't open it. Right then, he hears a noise from the back of the den inside the ventilation. The crow turns again. Den comes back, suffocated. And the crow slowly goes towards the bridge and the crow. Den gets scared seeing that. He quickly goes inside the bridge to save the crow. The crow sees Den and hits him with a ledge. Den quickly falls very far away. Fortunately, the crow doesn't attack him immediately. It takes a few seconds. Those few seconds save Den. Right then, the crow's consciousness returns. The crow opens his eyes and Den is sitting next to him. Bloodied. The crow says in a weak voice, "How did I come here?" Den calms the crow. And then the crow can understand that Den has come to know that pride. The crow says in a loud voice, "I can't tell you." Den holds his hand and says, "Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine." The night comes. Den puts the crow on the sofa in the shooting so that it stays a little high. Den then looks up and sees Lucky eating pizza. Den says from the bottom of his mouth, "Lucky, please throw the pizza down a little." Lucky can also understand. At one point, he pulls a piece of pizza out of his mouth and throws it down. Den and the crow share it somehow. That little food keeps them alive. But 2 days later, the food and water run out. On the third morning, Den's body starts to tremble with dehydration. The biggest problem is that Den is unable to take insulin. Gradually, his head goes round, his eyes close, and at one point, Den stays unconscious all day. At night, Den's consciousness returns. He sees that the crow is holding him tight so that he won't let him loose. Den asks about the crow with a weak voice. At some point, the crow says that the crow is actually a female. Because today at daytime, they saw that she laid a few eggs. Hearing this news, fear and hope come to Den's head at the same time. Fear because the mother crow will be more aggressive. And hope because eggs are a source of food. At the same time, it starts raining outside. The rainwater keeps falling on some bridges. And Den and the crow keep some water in some way. The third day also ends like this. Then the fourth morning. Den is unable to move his eyes. The crow is slowly coming forward. Den gets up quickly. Before the crow reaches the crow, he slips and falls into the ventilation tunnel. Den doesn't let go of his hand. He hurriedly pushes the crow towards the entrance of the tunnel and throws it further inside. Then Den and the crow pull the shooting sofa and cover the entire entrance of the ventilation tunnel. So that the crow can't get out anymore. Now there is a source of food in front of them. The eggs of the crow were inside the tunnel. Den tries to light a fire by hitting the dry bricks and stones. His spectacles focus on the sun and somehow the fire rises. Then they boil the eggs and eat them. Whatever the taste, the eggs save their lives then. They try to get energy all day. At night, they try to get up with the help of the sofa again. But now they can't reach the edge of the bridge. Both of them give up. They keep talking while sitting on the sofa. Because both of them have understood that they can't stay on such a road and dehydration for another day. That's why they have a terrible plan. They thought they would go inside the tunnel, put the sofa and leave the crow on the bridge. Then the crow will go out and they will try to get out by the path inside. On the fifth morning, they do the same thing. They open the mouth of the tunnel. The crow comes out of the tunnel by making a sound like a crow. At first, it goes towards the eggs. And then it sees that the eggs are destroyed. Then it comes out towards the den. At the last moment, the den hides itself inside the tunnel. Some people had already slept on one side of the tunnel. But the situation inside the tunnel is getting worse. For a few days, the body is breaking down because of not taking insulin. The head is spinning. The breath is getting smaller. And the den can understand that now the crow's biggest enemy is its own body. Sitting inside the tunnel, the den and the crow are lying on a table on the upper side. They can see that there is still an injection of insulin on the table. The den's eyes get teary. It slowly tries to pull it towards itself with a long stick. It feels like it will get it in a few seconds. But unfortunately, the injection falls down when it comes close to the hand. It breaks down together. The den and a few other people sit helplessly. They can't keep their eyes closed. Because they feel that there is no way out. The fifth day ends like this. Then the sixth day begins. The den again stays inside the tunnel. At the same time, it finds this small box. The lady had thrown the bag down the stairs the day before. As soon as it opens the box, it sees that there is a real stock of insulin inside. The den does not delay for a moment and injects itself. A few moments later, its head starts to heal. The strength of the body comes back. Someone gets a little shocked to see the den. In the morning, the den sees a parachute over the mouth of the ventilation. Someone has sent a rescue like a den. It comes back to the bridge with its life. It is uncertain where the crow is hiding. But when it gets up, it sees that the parachute is actually tied to a toy drone. Even then, the den does not stop. It shrieks from below and tries to get help. No one listens on all four sides. But the wind does. Some of the clothes on top of the sharp, wet wind slips into the bridge. The den pulls the clothes. It is long and seems to be used like a rope. The den starts to get up by force. The hand is cut, the skin is torn, and blood is shed. But the den keeps getting up. At last, it almost reaches one corner of the bridge. Just then, the clothes are torn. The den is completely lost and falls down. The head is burnt and the den becomes unconscious. A few moments later, when the den is conscious, the movie's shooting spot rises again. It can understand that something more terrible is waiting in front of it. The hand of the den is bleeding. And the place of the crow's nest on the leg is even worse. But somehow it keeps itself in front. The night comes. And the terrible rain starts again from all four sides. The water inside the tunnel is frozen in the rain. Someone gets stuck on one side of the tunnel. He keeps pushing the den with his weak neck. The den comes out. But this time it goes the other way in the tunnel. Suddenly, the den can see something like a lid. The den understands that this is the way out. It opens the lid and goes up. But as soon as the lid opens, the hope of the den breaks. Because it is another huge cave swimming pool. There is no ladder to get up in this pool. The only way is to go from one side to the other. But there is no way out. The den understands that this is a complete complex. There is another bridge and a tunnel connected together. The den suddenly returns to the tunnel again. The last day ends like this. On the morning of the seventh day, two people come to the bridge while searching for the playground drone. They want to take a mouse inside the bridge. But they can't see anyone. Because the den is inside the tunnel at some point. And the sofa is covered with ventilation. The den hears their footsteps. But can't see. It wanted to open the lid of the tunnel and scream. But they leave at that time. But luckily, they keep the mouse inside the pool. After a while, the rain gets heavier. The den gets up again and moves towards the mouse. Just then, the mouse comes in front again. At the same time, water enters the tunnel. And the mouse almost drowns. The den is in front of the mouse on one side. And the mouse is drowning on the other side. The den screams for help. And the mouse runs to save it again. The den pushes the mouse away with all its strength. But at the same time, another tragedy happens. A heavy barrel next to the mouse slips into the rain. The barrel rolls down and hits the mouse. The mouse falls down. And there is no other way to get up from the bridge. The den breaks down at the same time. Because it knows that they are almost done. A flute is playing in the river while drowning. Everyone hears it. The flute keeps playing till the top. Hearing this, the flute on top becomes unstable. As if it really wants to bring someone down. The den screams from the bottom to stop the flute. But the flute is in danger. It comes to save the flute. But the chain was tied around the flute's neck. The chain gets stuck in the neck. The flute runs and raises its hand. But before it can do anything, the flute stops. The den sees its beloved dog dying in front of its eyes. And at the same time, it is almost done. These two blows drive the den crazy. It takes a stick and throws the flute into the pool. The flute jumps on the den's back. And the den throws it away. The den is devastated. But it doesn't stop. It tries to get up holding the flute's body. After 7 days, the den finally manages to get up. The den leans towards the ventilation, because it knows someone is still stuck there. But then the tunnel is filled with rain. There is no way out. The den doesn't give up. It tries to break the lock with a stick. It opens the lock with great difficulty. But as soon as it opens, the den falls into another pool. It is lucky that it can fall into the right corner, so it doesn't drown. The den gets up again with all its strength. Then it quickly takes the water-filled tunnel and searches for someone. It searches a lot and finally finds someone. Looking at someone, the den feels like it's all over. The body is cold, exhausted. But the den doesn't give up. It gives CPR. And it tries to squeeze the stomach to get water out. After a few times of exhaustion, someone starts coughing. Someone dies. Someone is sold. The den and someone hold on to each other with all their might. The inside of the tunnel breaks for the sake of luck. But at last, the two of them are alive. And this is where our story ends.